Hello, uh, good morning. I'm Dr. Sudarsanam. I have worked in IT industry for about 14, 15 years, and currently I'm a faculty in VIT Business School, Chennai. See, this course is about project management. We are going to discuss about what is a project and what is the project life cycle and what are the project management processes and what are the various project knowledge areas as defined in uh, project management book of knowledge. So let's start with defining what is a project. Project, as you all know, is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or a result, right? Basically something which has a start date and an end date, which has a certain set of constraints, and which has various phases, right? We look at what are the key characteristics of a project, right? First is the temporary. Temporary means you have a beginning and a definite end date, and project starts with set of objectives and goals. So once these objectives or goals are reached, it's clear whether it is met or not met, depending on whether it's successful, project is successful. If the objective is not met, project is terminated if they're not met. Temporary doesn't mean that it's short in duration. There are projects which run more than 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, even up to 10 years. You look at metro projects in India. So they run about 5 years for each phase. For example, in Chennai, they construct the metro, right? Even the first phase, it gets over in 2-3 months time, and they're going to start the next stage. So it will take another 5 years for the phase 2 to get completed. So, see, that is one aspect of it. You look at also, in addition, temporary doesn't generally apply to the product or service. Most projects are undertaken to create a lasting result. See, temporary doesn't mean that the results are temporary, right? See, for example, you construct a national monument, or even, for example, the metro, right? So it will run for hundreds of years. In addition, projects have intended and unintended social, economical, environmental impacts that far outlast the project themselves. So there could be projects with environmental impacts, economic impacts, and social impacts. The temporary nature of the projects may apply to other aspects of the endeavor. The opportunity or market window is usually temporary. Some projects has a limited time frame in which to produce the product or service. That means they need to produce the product or service within a limited time frame. Even, for example, you look at mobile phones. So they cannot design a mobile phone for 1 year or 2 years. They need to do it within 3 months, 6 months time, because by the time it comes to market, it might get the newer product might come in, and this may get outdated, right? Also, the project team as a functioning unit never outlives the project. That means team created for the purpose of performing project, team created for the performing the project, they need to perform the project, and then they'll be disbanded and reassigned to the other parts of the organization. Then we look at the second point of a product. See, first, project is temporary. Now we are saying it's a unique product, service, or result. Project has to create a unique product, service, or result. Projects involve creating something that has not been done in exactly the same way before, and which is therefore unique and distinct. Project create a product or artifact that is produced, quantifiable, either an end item itself or a component item. Product or an artifact is produced, right? Capability to perform a service such as business functions, supporting production or distribution, or you create a policy administration system, right? It provides a service. It can create new policies, renew policies, and things like that. Product, it could be, for example, a new car. It can be a product, new car launched in the market. Also, it can be a product, service, or a result. Result means new knowledge. For example, a research development project develops knowledge that can be used to determine whether or not a trend is present or a new process will benefit society. Or it could be a survey, a big survey. They do it as a project. They take 2 to 3 months time, and then come up with the survey results. So that is treated as a project. So next point about projects is progressive elaboration. It's a characteristic of projects that accompanies the concepts of temporary and unique. It means developing through in steps, continuing steadily by increments. Project scope will be described early in the project, made more explicit detail as the project team develops a better, more complete understanding of the objectives and deliverables. That means the scope or the objectives of the project gets elaborated as the project goes along. And there is a difference between project elaboration and scope creep. Project elaboration must be carefully coordinated with proper project scope definition if the project is performed under contract. Scope creep is something which is they give you some requirements, they suddenly come up with the 2 new requirements, right? So that is the scope creep. See, for example, if you have 10 requirements, the customer suddenly comes up and says you need to do 5 more new requirements. That means they are increasing the scope of work, right? So progressive elaboration is not that they are not coming with the new requirements, but the requirements get elaborated as the project goes from the initial stage, analysis phase, designing, coding and testing phases, through the various phases of the project. So the scope of the project, work to be done, should be controlled as the product specification are progressively elaborated. That means scope should be controlled in the sense they need to watch out for the requirements, with the changes in requirements. Every project they may have an upper limit of, let's say, 15 to 20%. They may not tolerate more than 20%. If the requirement, they keep changing the requirement more than 20%, then the project manager will inform the customer that it's very difficult to develop the project or do the project with so much requirement changes. So now we look at major characteristics of the project. Project should have an established objective. First thing is, should have an established objective. Second is, it has a defined lifespan with a beginning and an end date. So it should have a beginning date and an end date. So objective means, or you can say from the objective you come up with the scope of work, what needs to be done. And project usually involves several departments and professionals. Means it could be from the finance department, marketing department, HR department, or any other functional areas, finance, or any other verticals like mobile, telecom. Depending on the type of project, you need to involve all the stakeholders. Usually doing something that has never been done before. So project is something, you can say it's unique, something which is not done before. Even if the sense you do something which is done 2 years ago, it's still unique because you're doing 2 years down the line. There are many changes which has happened to the technology or to the domain. So it's still, it will be unique. Set of routines versus customization. A specific time, cost, and performance. High degree of accountability, balance and trade-off, and customer satisfaction. So we'll go to the next slide. And what is the difference between a project and an operational work, right? See, projects basically is temporary. Operational works are ongoing. There are certain similarities between projects and operational work. For example, they are performed by people, constrained by limited resources, planned and executed and controlled. Projects and they differ primarily in that operations are ongoing and repetitive, whereas projects are temporary and unique. It's not repetitive. The objectives are fundamentally different. The purpose of the project is to attain its objectives and then terminate. The purpose of the ongoing operation is to sustain the business. Basically, business as usual projects. Say, for example, maintenance engagements, maintenance work. They are treated as operational work. Some of the developmental work can be treated as projects. Projects are different because the project concludes when its specific objectives have been attained. Operations adopt a new set of objectives and the work continues. So projects has a end date, whereas the operational work doesn't end, it keeps going. So projects are undertaken at all levels of the organization, and they can involve a single person or many thousands. The duration ranges from a few weeks to several years. As we discussed, the duration of the project can be from a few weeks to several months, several years. It involves one or many organizational units such as joint ventures and partnerships. So basically you need to have a you need to have a judicial mixture of various departments. You bring in people from various key departments which are impacted, and then they come in and they work as a team for the period of the project, and then once the objectives are reached, they are disbanded and they are sent back to their original teams. So some of the examples of the projects: so developing a new product or service, affecting a change in the structure or staffing or styling of an organization, designing a new transportation vehicle, constructing a building or facility, or even constructing the metro trains, or you say constructing the nuclear power plants, or constructing windmills, and building a water system for the community, running a campaign for the political office. See, for example, the election campaign they do for the Lok Sabha elections now, they're all run by some campaign managers, and they outsourced. So for example, Congress, they outsourced to Japanese campaign managers for a certain amount. So who will give them the advice on how to run the campaign, what are the key things they need to do, things like that. And implementing new business procedures or process, responding to a contract solicitation, or even it could be a legal regulation driven. For example, government wants you to comply with certain regulations, or even if you look at year 2000 problem. In the year 2000, all the companies, they need to have the Y2K compliant code. So that is the event driven projects. So it could be regulation driven, in the sense government asked certain people to comply with certain regulations. Say for example, Sarbanes-Oxley Act in banks, and HIPAA regulations for health insurance. So they are all regulation driven projects. Now we see the difference: projects and strategy. Projects are a means of organizing activities that cannot be addressed within the organizational norms and operational limits. They are often utilized as means of achieving organization's strategic plan, whether the project team is employed by the organization or contracted service provider. Sometimes the company doesn't have the skill set to execute the project, so they may outsource the project to a vendor or a third party, so who have the skills to perform the project. Projects are typically authorized as a result of one or more of the following strategic considerations. Market demand. An oil company authorizes project to build a new refinery in response to chronic gasoline shortages, right? Or say for example, smartphones. So once somebody comes up with a new smartphone, for example, Apple comes up with the iPhone 5s, then other mobile companies, they try to come up with the new phones to match the 5s. Samsung may come up with something, or even the tablets. Somebody comes up with a new tablet, then the other companies try to create new products. So that is the market demand. So business need. Training company authorizes a project to create new courses in order to increase its revenue. So it could be part of expanding your business. You need to get into new products, new services, then you create new projects. Customer request, or it could be a customer request in the sense vendors, they go for request for proposals, compete, and then customer selects the vendor, and then they need to do the work. Or even for example, insurance companies, say somebody policy premium is let's say below 1 million, somebody insures for 1 million, then you need to create a new project where the premiums are taken care up to 1 million. So you need to expand the premium, field expansion projects. It could be based on driven by a customer request. Technological advance, new projects to develop new generation of video game players, introduction of the corresponding new game format. So new, as you said, we talked about mobile technology. Some new technology comes in, new operating systems comes in. Then everybody gets into those areas and then try to improve their product with the new technology. And a legal requirement. Paint manufacturer to establish guidelines for handling new toxic material. How the factory treats the wastes based on the legal requirement. And as I previously discussed, this in banking they have the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and then in insurance you have the HIPAA, health insurance. So like that, every vertical has its own legal requirements to be fulfilled. In case it's not done, they need to create a project and then fulfill them before the deadline given by the government. So now we look at what is, so far we discussed about projects, operations, what is a project, and what is strategy, how the projects fit in, how the projects are generated. So now we look at what is project management. So project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So basically, you need to have the domain knowledge, you need to have the technology knowledge, and you need to have the process knowledge, and you need to have the people management skills. These are some of the key areas. We get into all the process areas in our later chapters. Project management is accomplished through the use of processing of initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. All the processes, each process areas, initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, closure phases of the project. The project manager is the individual responsible for managing the project. So the project manager is a key part of the project. So basically, before you start with the project they come with a project charter, and the project sponsor need to identify the project manager. Then the project manager comes in, then he recruits the team or brings a set of team within the organization based on the skills, domain knowledge, processes, and then builds up the team. So project management involves identifying the requirements, establishing clear and achievable objectives, balancing the competing demands for quality, scope, time, and cost. So basically, demand for quality, scope. Scope is something like what are the things you need to do for the project, what are the set of requirements. So that covers the scope. Time means the duration, how long you are going to do, what is your beginning date, what is the end date, see what is the duration of the project. Cost, so what is the cost of the entire project. Quality means what are the set of processes you are going to use, what are the quality standards you need to deploy. Is it ISO, CMMI, TMMI, based on the standards you need to know, and based on which there is a cost of quality also, in the sense all these quality processes, building all this, it takes a lot of time. You need to build resources into it, get those people with experience in the quality process into the team. Adopting the specification plans, approach to different concerns, expectations of the various stakeholders. So you need to identify the various key stakeholders for the project. For example, the customer is a key stakeholder. Your project team is a key stakeholder. Your organization, project sponsor is a key stakeholder. The vendors, any other external party is a key stakeholder. So you need to identify the key stakeholders and find out their level of involvement, and how do you manage the expectations of the stakeholders. So these are all the broadly the roles of the project manager. See, the project manager often talk about the triple constraint: scope, time, and cost. Project requirements. Project quality is affected by balancing these three factors. High quality projects deliver the required product or service within the scope, on time, within the budget. So those who are delivering high quality projects, they deliver within the scope, on time, within the budget. The relationship among these factors is such that if any one of the factors changes, others also, there is an impact on the others. Say for example, there is a impact on the time. Say for example, it's going to delay by 1 week, right? So that means you are not delivering the scope on time, and also the cost of the project is going to increase because you are increasing it by 1 week. So you are putting the resources for one more extra week effort. So that is going to increase the cost of the project. So basically all this, they are called as triple constraints, like a triangle, right? So you need to be, it has to be a triangle. If you keep extending one thing, it will not be a triangle. So to make it a triangle, you need to, say for example, you increase the time, right? Then what happens is you need to increase the other cost side of the triangle to bring it as a triangle. So project risks. Also manage projects in response to uncertainty. Project risks. So project risk is an uncertain event or condition if that occurs. See, project risk normally is thought of as a negative effect, but there could be risks which are positive for the projects on the project objectives. Say for example, the resources. Suddenly what happens if some key resource leaves the project? So you need to have somebody backed up, or if he's very important, then it will have a bearing on the time of the delivery or the quality of the project. All those things take a hit. So when you bring in a resource, you need to be sure that he's the right person, and he stays the full length of the project. They're motivated to complete the project. So the project manager recruiting the team members is a key activity, since he need to identify the right resources, not the resources who are available on bench or who are there. He just picks up, then the project manager will be in trouble. Or in some cases, in my experience, what I come across is, suppose you run a project with a lot of contractors, in the sense they're not your company people, but you bring in people from outside, right? So the contractors, they are in the I'm talking about the contractors in the in India. The sense they're not paid as well as the companies like TCS, Infosys employees. So there is a tendency on the contractor's part to find out some better opportunity. If a better opportunity comes, he will leave the next day. So the projects will be in jeopardy. So I have had this kind of situation where suddenly 2, 3 contractors leave and the project in offshore is in jeopardy, and you need to had a situation where I had to myself and one more person need to run the project for about 2 to 3 weeks time till we get the right replacement. So these sort of sometimes what happens is project manager comes in between. He doesn't have control of the resources. So it's always better that project manager is identified at the beginning of the project, stays till the completion, and also he needs to have a big say in the resource or team member selection, so that he has better control over them. He has a better judgment on the resources, on the risk. So there could be other risks also, in the sense scope creep is a risk. See, for example, suddenly the customer increases the scope of the project, then the scope increases. So this causes changes to the overall estimates, time, and then cost of the project. So the project manager needs to be wary of those scope changes. Normally, there would be a cushion of about 20% for those risks in the estimate. When you estimate the project, what you tend to do is add some cushion of 20% for project management and unknown risks about 10%, so that you are covered in all those areas. If the scope creep is within the 15 to 20% margin, but if it is beyond the 20% margin, that's where we tend to escalate the things to the customer, saying that we can't have more than 20% creep in the scope of the project. So this is one risk. Like that, you need to identify each of the risks, and then you need to categorize the risk, whether is it a high probability of the risk happening, and if it happens, what is the impact of the risk. So in the impact, in the sense, if the risk happens, what happens to the project, impact on the scope, impact on the time, impact on the cost, impact on the deliverable. All those things you need to be wary and identify the key risks in the project in each phase of the project, and then proactively control the risk, mitigate the risks, and have some risk mitigation plans. Those are the areas people need to be guarded about. The project management team has a professional responsibility to the stakeholders, including customers, the performing organization, and the public. So the project manager has a key responsibility to the stakeholders, customers, performing, and the general public. So now we discuss about the project management process groups. There are 5 process groups required for any project. They have clear dependencies and are performed in the same sequence on each project. They are independent of the application area or industry focus. So first was the initiating process group. It defines and authorizes the project or phase. So that is, initiation phase is where the phase where you kickstart the project. Say for example, the business manager comes up with a business need, or it could be a market demand, it's a regulation based on which the project is kickstarted, and a project charter is created. The project charter contains the key objectives of the project, business need of the project, what is broadly the timeline, and high-level estimates of the project. So based on the project charter, the project sponsor identifies the project manager, and then the project manager starts the initial preparation of the project. Then you have the planning process group. defines and refines the objectives and plans the best course of action to attain the objectives and scope that the project phase was to undertaken to address. So the planning phase of the project is how do you go about how you go about planning the project, and it's all like coming up with the high level project plan and then the detailed project plan on executing the project. Then you have the executing the process group where you need to execute the project plan to carry out the project management plan for the project or the phase. So once it's getting executed, you need to have the monitoring and controlling process. So the monitoring and controlling process, it could be set in motion even during the planning phase or execution. It overlaps between the planning and the execution phases, where you need to monitor and control the project during the various phases. So basically, monitoring and controlling is like you're looking at the key metrics, whether you have delivered as per the as per your deadlines, as per the you have delivered as per the milestones, whether you have reached the milestones, and then you have delivered as per the quality, as per the scope, as per the contract. You need to check all those things in the monitoring and controlling phases. So a lot of quality process also inbuilt into the monitoring and controlling process. It's not that other process doesn't have the quality, but here you have stringent quality metrics, things which you need to track the project during the various phases of the project. Closing process group formulation, acceptance of the product, service or result. You need to close the project. You need to verify whether the project has met the objectives, and in case if it met the objectives, and then you need to document the lessons learned, and then you need to document the key findings, risks, all those whatever possible, so that they get into the knowledge management repository for the company, and anybody comes in later does a similar kind of project, they can refer to this project and have a good learning, and they need not reinvent the wheel. They can look at what are the things which have been carried out in the project. They can do those, start up with those things in the next project. So these are all the broadly the project management process areas, PMBOK knowledge areas as we call, project management book of knowledge. So here so this is the various knowledge areas of the project PMBOK. So we look at each of them, like for example project integration management, and then project scope management, and then project time management, project cost management, project quality management, project human resource management, project communication management, project risk management, project procurement management. So we look at all this step by step as we go along. So right now what we do is we look at a high level of what each of these project management knowledge areas are about. So you look at project integration management. So here you talk about project plan development. How do you develop the project plan? What are the key things you need to have to develop the project plan? For example, you need to have the statement of work. Statement of work is something which defines the scope of work, what is the broad timeline, what are the estimates, what is the cost, so what is the mode of the project, whether it is a time and material or fixed price project, what type of project it is, and then what is the deadline, and what is the total cost of the project, and what are the key roles and responsibilities of each of the stakeholders. So all those things comes into the statement of work. So with the statement of work and other documents, you come up with the project plan. So you develop the project plan in this. So this comes under the planning phase of the process area. Then you have the project plan execution. So it comes in the execution phase. Then you have the integrated chain control, comes under the monitoring and control phase. So as you say, each knowledge area encompasses, it could be initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, all those areas, process groups are intertwined in each of the knowledge project management book of knowledge areas. Then you look at project scope management. So initially you have the scope planning. Initiation means come up with the initial scope. Then scope planning, in the sense how do you go about developing the scope. And then scope definition. The scope definition, in the sense you come up with the set of scope, in the sense you come up with a set of objectives. Basically, in this scope definition phase, what you do is you break the scope, you create the WBS, work breakdown structure. Basically, for example, you have let's say five objectives. Each objectives you break it down into sub objectives and then sub deliverables, and then go to break it down into smallest deliverable, right? So those smallest deliverable are your work packages. Smallest deliverable is something where you can do the estimation of the deliverable. Say for example, you are constructing a house. It could be first you would do a basement plan, then you have the first floor, second floor. Then within the basement plan there could be several things. It could be flooring, it could be various activities. So you break it down into various sub phases, activities, and then try to estimate the least activity. For example, you take the you are developing some application, right? Then you come up with the what are the set of programs involved, what are the high level design, then low level design, then the programs, then in the program how many programs. So at the program level you try to come up with the estimate. That is like a work package. Each program can be treated as a work package. Then you try to estimate. So those sort of things, you create the WBS, work breakdown structure, in the scope definition phase. Then scope verification comes under the monitoring and control, and scope change control also comes under part of the monitoring and control. Then you go to the project time management. You have the activity definition, activity sequencing. Say for example, we discussed about the WBS, right? So WBS, for each work package you can come up with a set of activities. So each activity you need to say what the activity definition, sense what is the activity name, and what is the sequence, in the sense what are the let's say you have 10 activities in a work package. Then you need to sequence what activity needs to be done first and which has to be done next, and then activity duration estimation. So once you have the estimates of the activity, either sometimes you may have the estimate, sometimes you may have the optimistic estimate, pessimistic estimate, most likely estimate. Then with all these three you can come up with the average estimate. And you have various models to calculate the activity estimate based on the type of activity you are doing. So once you are able to estimate the activity, then you try to develop the schedule, in the sense you come up with the network diagram. So for example, you can use the MS project to put up all the activities sequence one by one, and then develop, say for example, one activity takes 1 day, what is the next activity, like that you can build these activities, and you can allocate the resources. So who are the people who are going to be involved in those activities, and then you come up with the Gantt chart, and then you can come up with the your network diagram. And once in the network diagram, you can identify the critical path. So critical path is something which is if you cause a delay in one activity, it will cause a delay in the entire project. So that is the critical path. So normally how do you do the cost management, right? Next we go to cost resource planning, cost estimation. So cost estimation in the sense how do you estimate the cost of the project, and then cost budgeting, cost control. See, in the resource planning, how do you allocate the resources or to each of the activities? All those things comes in cost management. Then you have the quality management, quality planning, quality assurance. Quality planning in the sense you come up with the project plan, right? So under that you need to come up with for each phase, what are the quality documents you need to come up with, what are the things you need to do. And then the quality assurance phase, uh, the quality controller or quality manager verifies those documents whether the project is as per the quality standards of ISO or CMMI or any other standards. And then the quality control is looking at the defects, looking at the deviations of the project, and then try to control them, and then try to control within the acceptable limits, and then do quality control audits, and then provide the findings to the quality team and ensure that they do the non-conformance items, and then they conform to the quality standards. Then you have the project human resource management, organization planning, staff acquisition, team development. So how do you go about planning your resources? How do you acquire the resources for the project? And then what are the strategies? How do you acquire, whether is it you recruit people, or if you have good internal resources whether you can use, or you outsource it and then manage the staff. And then next stage is this team development. Team development is a very important part of it. You come up with the set of people for the project, and then what you do is how do you develop the team. Basically there are various stages in the team development. Initial phase, they call forming phase, norming phase, storming phase, right? So there are various phases of the team development. Forming in the sense you form the team, and then norming phase in the sense you identify the key roles and responsibility for the team, and then storming phase in the sense once you have the team members may not gel properly. There may be internal fight between the team members for space, for roles, could be difference of opinion. So these areas of stages you need to, if you are building up a very good team, you need to reduce the time taken to get into a performing stage. Storming and then performing, right? And then norming and then performing. Performing stage is where everybody contributes to the project and then does a good work, right? So in the what happens, how do you what are the strategies you need to do to get into the performing stage of the team development? So basically there are some tools, there are some methods available. For example, many, they go for a team outing, they take them out to outdoor activity so that people get to know each other well, and then they gel as a team. Try to do a lot of team building activities in the initial stages of the project so that the team works and gels together, and they know the objectives of the project, and then all those, they work together to achieve the objectives of the project. Then you look at the communication management, communication planning in the sense you need to plan for each stage of the project. What are the things you need to communicate? What are the ways of communication? Whether you use mobile phone, you use VoIP phones, and you use emails, and you use video conferencing. Various ways of communication. How do you communicate team from on-site and offshore? How do you communicate with your customer? And what are the timelines? How long, weekly once do you communicate, or daily one, depending on the type of project. For example, if you have the agile projects, they they may have a daily stand-up meetings with the customer. And normal projects tendency is to have weekly meetings, uh, weekly teleconferencing with the customer, and you come up with the project weekly reports, and then the customer you discuss with the customer the weekly reports, and then explaining the project status and the improvements, and if there are any issues which the customer need to sort it out, and then which issues which it could be of resources, it could be of technology issues, or it could be of any process issues. Those things we need to discuss during the telecommunication meetings with the customer or with the on-site team. And the information distribution, as I said, how do you distribute the information? It could be in terms of emails, it could be in terms of documents, it could be in terms of emails, it could be in terms of video conferencing. How do you distribute? What are the information? What are the key things you give to the customer, give to the on-site? Performance reporting. How do you report the performance? In the sense, how do you report your performance of the project? Normally, the performance reporting is done basically on a monthly basis, where you give a monthly dashboard, how you have performed on the service level agreements compared to last month, last year, and whether you have met all the contractual obligations, key metrics. Some people they call KPIs, key performance indicators, for service level agreements. There is KPIs, whether I met all the KPIs, and how is your customer satisfaction levels. Everything you can bring it up in the performance reporting. And then you have the administration, whether you have done everything as per the contracts and administration. Then you look at project risk management. So project risk management is basically how do you identify the risk, how do you risk identification is a very important part of the risk management. What are the various techniques you use to identify the risk? It could be brainstorming, it could be referring to the knowledge management repository, and it could be any other methods, or you can look at Google, internet, similar kind of projects using social media. Basically identify the key risks for the project in this phase using various mechanisms, or it could be Delphi technique, it could be brainstorming, it could be expert opinion, it could be any other informal discussions with key players in the industry. Then you look at the quantitative risk analysis. How do you do quantitative risk analysis? See, quantitative risk analysis, what are the key things are, one is the probability, the second is the impact. Say for example, you look at what is the probability of the risk happening, whether is it high, medium or low, and what is the impact. If the risk happens, what is the impact on the project, whether is it going to be a high impact or a medium impact or a low impact, right? So based on these two factors, you come up with your mitigation strategy. So for example, if you have a high impact and high probability, then you need to have straight away a mitigation strategy in place. Suppose you have a low probability, low impact, you need not spend much time on it, but you keep monitoring it so that whether it gets into a high impact, high probability zone, you keep looking at those risks. Don't take them out of your radar, but keep looking at it, whether currently how the situation is for those risks. So once you come up with this quantitative risk analysis, then you identify those key risks which you need to have a mitigation strategy in place. Then you come up with the risk response plan. In the sense, how do you mitigate the risks? What are the response strategies you have, right? So normally, what are the risk response strategy anybody can think of? Say, for example, one can say, I accept the risk. So that is one strategy. If the cost of mitigation is very high, right? Say, for example, if a tsunami hits Chennai or hits any other city, right? So what is the mitigation plan? What is the plan in place? So basically, if you have a tsunami warning coming in, then you try to evacuate the people, right? So that means what you are doing is you are mitigating, you are reducing the impact of the risk, impact of the tsunami by taking out all the people. So for example, recently there was a big cyclone hit Andhra coast. So many they evacuated around 2 to 3 lakh people from the coastal areas. So what they basically did is reduce the impact of the risk because it's a high probability, high impact. In the sense the impact was thought to be high, but it was medium later. But still, it caused a considerable damage. But people have been evacuated and lives have been saved. So like that, those are the. For tsunami is concerned, how do you reduce the probability? That's a very difficult thing. But there are many cases where you can even reduce the probability of the impact by doing certain things. And okay, as I said, accepting the risk is one part of it. Mitigating is try to reduce the you impact, reduce the impact of the risk. That is one part of the mitigation. And the other part of it is accepting the risk, mitigating the risk, transferring the risk. Transferring the risk is basically you are transferring the risk to a third party. Say, for example, you are not able to develop a project. You feel that your company doesn't have the resources to do the project. Then what you do is transfer the risk to the third party or the vendor who does the project for you. Or your insurance, for example, you are transferring the risk to the insurance company, right? So these are all some examples of a risk response planning. And then risk monitoring and control, in the sense you need to keep looking at the risk, monitor the risks, whether they are high impact, high probability, how they are. Even after mitigating the risk, you look for any residual risks which may still be present. You may not have fully mitigated the risk. So those are the areas you need to concentrate in the risk management area. So this is broadly a comparison of project management knowledge areas and then the process management groups. As you said, project integration management. So it covers, if you look at it, it covers all the areas here. Say, for example, develop project charter, develop project scope statement, the part of the initiation. Planning, you have to develop the project management plan, and then direct manage project execution, comes in execution, monitoring and control, integrated change control, closing the project. Similarly for the scope management, scope planning, scope definition, create WBS, they all comes in the part of the planning process. Scope verification and scope control, part of the monitoring and control phase. Then the project time management activity. If you look at most of the things, the time management comes under the part of planning phase, and schedule control comes under part of the monitoring and control phase. Similarly, cost management also, most of the things come to cost estimation and cost budgeting comes under the planning phase. Cost control comes under the monitoring and control phase. Similarly, look at the other areas, knowledge areas, project quality management. So it starts with the planning phase and then till the monitoring and control phase. Similarly, you have the project HR, comes under the human resource planning project team. Then you have the develop project team, manage project team comes under the monitoring and control. Communication planning comes under planning. Distribution, information distribution, in the sense sending out emails and weekly status reports, all those comes under the information distribution. Performance reporting, manage stakeholders, reporting the service level agreements, all those things come as part of monitoring and control. If you look at risk management, most of the areas of the risk management comes under the planning phase. And risk monitoring and control comes under the monitoring and control phase. Project procurement management. So even though all those things, risk monitoring and control comes under the monitoring and controlling process group, but this monitoring and control process may encompass from planning till closure. So basically, monitoring and controlling phase doesn't include only monitoring and control. It may intertwine between planning, execution, and closing also. So you need to monitor all those other phases of the process group as well. Then you look at project procurement management. So procurement and acquisition. Basically, your procurement means buying or acquiring the team, buying the products, or buying the machine, buying the raw materials for the project. Those things come. How do you do the contracting with the plan contracting, in the sense what type of contract you have the vendors, whether is it a fixed price or a time and material or any other model. Then in the execution, request seller responses, in the sense you ask for the RFP responses and then select the sellers that are part of the execution process. Contract administration, in the sense once you selected, how do you administer the contract? How do you ensure that the vendor delivers as per the contract? You monitor and control, or basically look at the service level agreements on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Ensure the vendors deliver as per the contract, that they are delivering as per all the contract clauses and guidelines. The final is the contract closure. At the end of the project, whether the contract is closed, or sometimes it could be a premature closure if the vendor has failed to deliver the service, or if he has caused a lot of delays or cost. You close the contract, but sometimes it's better to close the contract, give it to a new guy, rather than stuck with the vendor who is not delivering as per the cost or the quality. So with this, we'll stop the first part of the project management introduction.